So Trump is in the Epstein files. There's no way around it. And like I said when I finished part 1 and just released it, some of y'all are going to be pretty upset when you see why and the context. So what I'm getting ready to show you is every instance from the most recent document dump that happened back in January of 2024, in which the Biden Department of Justice released over 2,000 documents, and Donald Trump's name shows up in those documents a total of 21 times across 18 different pages. But first, I want to set the stage. Back in the early 2000s, Donald Trump, a billionaire, owned Mar-a-Lago. Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire, lived right down the road with one of his properties, also in Palm Beach County, Florida. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were regular visitors of Donald Trump's at Mar-a-Lago. They were both billionaires. They ran in similar circles. That's no secret. But what happened in early 2000s is ultimately Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein started recruiting underage girls out of Donald Trump's club, having them go work for Jeffrey Epstein to do all kinds of inappropriate things. Donald Trump ended up catching wind of this, and he kicked Epstein out of his property and told him he's not allowed to return anymore. So what you're getting ready to see are all the instances in which Donald Trump's name is brought up as a result of the criminal case that sprung from a stepmother of a 14-year-old who was recruited to go work for Epstein and filed a criminal case against him. Everything that you're going to see is a result of that. By the way, that's also the case in which the Pam Bondi Department of Justice has petitioned the judge in Southern Florida to release the actual grand jury testimony, and they've refused. A Democrat-appointed judge, appointed by Barack Obama, is refusing to provide any more details. The first instances of Donald Trump's name showing up in these documents I want to show you actually came as part of the Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia Giuffre lawsuit, the defamation lawsuit. This was a deposition taken with a girl named Johanna Schoberg, who was also one of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers. And in this part of the conversation, the attorneys and Johanna are talking about a flight in which she was on. And they were heading, I believe, to New York. But for some reason, the pilot said they weren't going to be able to land in New York. So Jeffrey said, great, we'll call up Trump and we'll go. I don't recall the name of the casino, but we'll go to the casino. So Jeffrey Epstein mentioned the name of Donald Trump, saying, well, since we can't go to where we want to, we're just going to call up Trump and we're going to go to Atlantic City and visit one of his casinos. And as that conversation goes on, the attorney is asking her additional questions, and Donald Trump's name comes up again, and I'll read it to you. It says, we left Palm Beach and landed in Atlantic City for a few hours because there was a storm in New York, and then got back on the plane a few hours later and landed in Teterboro. And you said that you recall landing in Atlantic City. Did you go into Atlantic City? Yes. We went to one of Trump's casinos. Did you actually go into the casino? Yes. Do you recall Virginia at the time, Virginia Roberts being with you? Yes. And the last instance in this part of the deposition is where the attorney is asking Johanna Schoberg if she ever massaged certain people and started reading off a list of names. Marvin Minsky, I don't know that. George Lucas, no. Donald Trump, no. Did you ever massage Donald Trump? No. And then the attorney says, sorry, I have to ask, but did you ever have with Alan Dershowitz in the back of a limousine with Virginia and Jeffrey present? And the witness, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So most of what we've heard in the media about these people, like Alan Dershowitz and others, when you put people under oath and you ask them questions in a deposition, their response is absolutely not. Now, when I ran a search of the over 2,000 documents that were released back in 2024, I found 21 hits of Donald Trump's name across 18 pages. 4 of those instances were instances like this, where the search was actually pulling up Trump's name, but not because they were in any article or not because they were in any pertinent document, but because the name was listed on the side of a promo from a screenshot of an article that was included in the file. This one, for instance, is advertising another article about Barron Trump and Melania Trump going to dinner. And here's another example of that. It's a headline to an entirely different article that is on the side of the page that was included in the file where it says Ivanka Trump shares morning snap of baby. That counts apparently as Donald Trump's name being in the file. Here's another instance of Donald Trump's name being in the file. This is a recommendation letter that was included in the Southern Florida lawsuit that proves that Virginia Giuffre's dad used to work for Donald Trump and he wrote a reference for her dad. That was in the file. And as part of the investigation for the Southern Florida case, they pulled a Social Security Administration income verification to verify whether or not Virginia actually worked for Donald Trump as 17-year-old as a locker room attendant. And they confirmed that she earned $1,800 back in 2000 as an employee of Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And interestingly enough, about 100 pages of the over 2,000 pages from the early 2024 dump include snapshots and printouts of articles that were written about this entire scenario. In almost every one of those articles, Donald Trump is mentioned, but not in any way relevant. It's almost as though the journalists were using a script to try to associate Jeffrey Epstein with important people. It said things like this: Epstein, Wall Street money manager, once counted Bill Clinton and Donald Trump among friends. And there were several other instances of that exact same thing, almost word for word. Somebody was trying to drive home the point that Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of important friends. The rest of what I'm going to show you comes from the conversation during the deposition between Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys. And it's important to understand that Virginia Giuffre gave an interview to New Yorker, I believe, a couple years earlier, and talked a lot about this case, about her experience working for Jeffrey Epstein, and made several statements in that article that still persist today, and the attorneys asking her about them. So in the deposition, the attorneys laid out a list of statements that were attributed to Virginia. And the attorney says, question, I'll let you read through the statements on the first page there. And if there is anything that is not absolutely true, put a check mark by it and we'll come back to it. And here is an actual copy of that list. And you'll notice it says a check mark next to Donald Trump was good friends with Jeffries. He didn't partake in any sex with any of us, but he flirted with me. He'd laugh and tell Jeffrey, you've got the life. So after she finished putting check mark next to things, this is the continuation of the conversation. Question, okay, what else did you put a check mark by? Answer, Donald Trump was also good friends with Jeffries. He didn't partake in any sex with any of us, but he flirted with me. He'd laugh and tell Jeffrey, you've got the life. And then the attorney goes on and says, question, all right, what's inaccurate about the last statement on that page? Answer, Donald Trump was also good friends with Jeffries. That part is true. He didn't partake in any sex with any of us, but he flirted with me. It's true that he didn't partake in any sex with us, but it's not true that he flirted with me. Donald Trump never flirted with me. And Virginia goes on and says, the next sentence is, he'd laugh and tell Jeffrey, you've got the life. And she says, I never said that to her. And it goes on. The attorney says, when you say he didn't partake in any sex with any of us, who is us? Answer, girls. Just, how do you know who Donald Trump had sex with? Oh, I didn't physically see him have sex with any of the girls, so I can't say who he's had sex with in his whole life or not. But I just know it wasn't with me, and I was with other girls. And who are the other girls that you were with in Donald Trump's presence? None. There. I worked for Donald Trump, and I've met him probably a few times. When have you met him? At Mar-a-Lago. My dad and him. I wouldn't say they were friends, but my dad knew him, and they would talk all the time. Well, not all the time, but when they saw each other. And then it goes on. It says, have you ever been in Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's presence? And she answers and says, no. What is the basis for your statement that Donald Trump is good friends with Jeffries? Jeffrey told me that Donald Trump is good friends of his. But you never observed them together? No. Not that I can actually remember. I mean, not off the top of my head, no. And when did Donald Trump flirt with you? He didn't. That's what's inaccurate. Did you ever see Donald Trump at Jeffrey's home? Not that I can remember. On his island? No, not that I can remember. In New Mexico? No, not that I can remember. In New York? Not that I can remember. And folks, that is it. That is every single record available today in the over 6,000 pages that we have access to. Every one of the mentions are either a journalist trying to draw an association, a voice message record, a flight log for flights to nowhere, and victims of Jeffrey Epstein saying, I never said that. Trump never touched me. I never saw him. That's it. Now do you see why they're so pissed?